Hi, everybody. How are you doing today? Wow. So here we are, looking at my hair. Just when I think I'm running out of questions. So, well, how are you doing? First off, hello, everybody. How you doing? Click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for telling your friends. I can tell we've gained a few more viewers, subscribers, because you did that. And the guy that made his family, the person who got their family to subscribe, thank you so much. Thank you so much. If everybody can just get a few people or even one person to subscribe, we'll get to 1,000. I know it's so crazy. We can't even get to 1,000. But anyway, I got up this morning. I ate a tangerine. And I feel really good. I feel really good. I don't eat usually in trying to eat later. Usually I get up and go to Killer Shrimp at 7 in the morning and eat, but I decided, no, I got to stop doing that. So now I'm not going there at 7 in the morning. I'm waiting till noon to eat and trying to be healthy. Anyway, so many questions. But before we go any further, I want to say, let me open my eyes here. I want to say, yesterday I made a mistake. I said Greg Raleigh. I don't know what I was thinking. Greg Raleigh was a keyboard player in Journey, and he played in Santana too. Good keyboard player, good singer. He came to my house once in Hawaii. We hung out. He seemed like a nice guy. He was cool. I liked him. Yeah, didn't know him really super well, but hung out a little bit, and he was nice. And that's always cool when you meet people and they're nice. You know what I mean? That's one of the nicest things. You meet people and they're nice, and you go, yeah, they're nice. Took me a long time to figure out people were nice, but I figured it out. Greg Elmore. Greg Elmore was the name of the drummer, not Greg Raleigh. God, I'm such a bird brain. I said Greg Raleigh yesterday. No, it was Greg Elmore. We weren't really in a band. We just played together a couple of times in high school, you know what I mean? But it wasn't really actually a band. It was more like we played together a couple of times. But Greg Raleigh, fuck, I did it again. Greg Elmore, that we went to the same high school. Somebody asked me, I'm going to try to do this. Wait a second. Oh, somebody asked me where I was when JFK was shot. And I'll tell you where I was. I just started going to junior college, and I was in Fresno. I went from Atwater to Fresno. Thought I'd gone to the big city or something. Anyway, I went to Fresno, and I had a job at J.C. Penney's in the stockroom. I was going to school there, but I also had a job, and I was working at J.C. Penney's, if you can imagine that, in the stockroom. Anyway, I came into work that morning, and there was a whole crowd of people that worked in the store. They were standing around the TVs because they had an area where there was a bunch of TVs. They selling TVs, and they were all standing around the TV, and I went over there and go, "What's up?" And somebody goes, "The president was shot." And I go, "You're kidding?" They go, "No, we're not kidding." That's kind of got mad at me, and I didn't mean that. Anyway, but so I stood there and watched, and I was really crushed. I remember feeling how wrong that was, because we all loved Kennedy, Now, I don't know that he was a good president or even a good guy for that matter, but something about him clicked, and we loved him, and he was shot, and that was horrible. Anyway, that's enough of that. But I will tell you one thing. Lee Harvey Oswald, a friend. I've told this story before. A friend of mine is a check collector. He's collected checks his whole life. He was my optometrist, Dr. Renard, and he went to NYU. Anyway, he was a check collector, and he collected all these checks. That checks from Benjamin Franklin, and I guess there's auctions where you go and you buy checks, and people are selling in checks, and it's a whole nother world that we don't know anything about. But anyway, he wrote a book. It was a bestseller, and it was about checks, and it was he wrote all about checks, but had different stories about checks, But I didn't read it naturally, but he told me some interesting stories about checks. But anyway, one day I went into his office, and he showed me this check, and he goes, "Look at this." And he hands me this check, and I'm holding this check. And it's Lee Harvey Oswald's last payroll check from the school book depository in Dallas, his last payroll check. And I'm looking at it, and I go, wow. And he goes, yeah, that's his last payroll check. And then he goes, turn it over. And I turn it over, and guess who endorsed it? Guess who cashed that check like just weeks before the assassination? This is really crazy. Jack Ruby. And there's Jack Ruby's signature on the back of Lee Harvey Oswald's check. And isn't that fucking bizarre? Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald, he killed Oswald. And just weeks earlier, he cashed his check. He signed the back of his check and cashed his payroll check. So there's a connection, I'll tell you that. And the Warren Commission, they saw that check. I asked him, I says, did the Warren Commission see the check? And he goes, oh, yeah, they saw it. But they didn't put it in the report. They didn't put a lot of stuff in the report. And somebody asked me about the Kennedy files were dropping yesterday. And I guess it was 80,000 pages, so it's going to take them a long time to go through all that shit to figure out what's up. And if they even can figure it out, I don't know. I was watching stuff last night about it, and it seems like we'll see. They're going to try to sort it out. But there's definitely a connection between Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. Cashed his fucking payroll check. Is that amazing? That's fucking amazing. Anyway, and I tried to buy the check from my eye doctor, and I said, well, he didn't put the check in his book. And I go, why didn't you put the check in your book? And he said he was afraid to put the check in his book about checks, his bestseller. He was afraid to put the Oswald check in there because he was afraid of the government, and so he didn't put it in there. And I said, well, what are you going to do with it? I'll show that check to the world. Let me buy it from you. And he said no. He was going to give his whole check collection to NYU when he retired and was near death or something. So I don't know if he still has that check or if he gave it to NYU, but Lee Harvey Oswald's payroll check from the school book depository cashed by Jack Ruby. If that isn't some crazy shit, that's about as crazy as it gets. And how could the Warren Commission refuse to put that in there? I wonder what else they didn't put in there. Anyway, I don't know if we'll ever know. And if they released 80,000 pages of documents, imagine that, 80,000 pages. Fuck. That's sort of a way of not releasing everything. Maybe they'll use AI to search through it, because I don't know how humans could search through 80,000 pages. But maybe AI can do that. I don't know. Anyway, that's my story of the Kennedy assassination. Greg Elmore, not Greg Raleigh, Greg Elmore. Don't forget that. Oh, somebody asked me, let's see. Somebody asked me about the Beatles' first album. About the Beatles, if I listened to the Beatles. Well, I listened to their first, I listened to Rubber Soul, Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper's, naturally. Those were the three albums I listened to. After that, I sort of faded. And when they went on their solo trips, I really wasn't into them that too much, because I was like an R&B kid. And in my LSD days, those Revolver albums and Rubber Soul and Sgt. Pepper, those albums meant something to me. I guess they meant something to all of us. Yeah, they meant something to all of us. Anyway, I remember a bunch of us got in a car and we were on acid and we drove to LAX and parked, and then we went in and we rode around on the moving sidewalks. We were so high. I don't know why we did that or why we went there, but that's what we did. And we had we were just tripping, man. Anyway, so I'll cross this off the list. I'm going down the list here. God, there's so many questions today. This is exciting. I have stuff to talk about. Okay. I never heard Mahogany Rush. Somebody asked me that. Have you ever heard Mahogany Rush, and what did I think of them? I don't know anything about them. I've heard their name before, but I never knew their music. So there you go. Oh, somebody asked me if I was a good wrestler. Oh, I was the worst wrestler. Lucky for me, I went to a small high school in a little tiny 10,000 person farm town. So it wasn't too hard to be on the wrestling team. If I would have gone anywhere serious, I I would have not definitely not made the team. I was the worst athlete that ever lived. I have to say that. I'll say that. And I really wanted to be good in sports because sports was cool. Everybody liked sports, and I wanted so bad to be a good athlete, and I tried so hard, man. I tried so hard. I worked so hard, and I loved wrestling, but I was the worst. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't good enough. I just wasn't athletic, and I couldn't. You ever see one of those people run and you laugh because they run so funny? That you see somebody running and you go, you start laughing because they run so bad. That's me, man. I can't run. I'm not a good wrestler. I was the worst. I got to say, without a doubt, I was the worst wrestler. But I wrestled varsity for 4 years. All 4 years I wrestled varsity because we had such a small school that was possible. Any other place, I wouldn't even have made the team. Anyway, I was the worst athlete. My whole life, I was the worst athlete. I played tennis, too, for 3 years. And I played football for 1 year, but I didn't like football at all. I liked tennis a lot, but once again, I was terrible. I was the worst. I was just the worst athlete. And I learned a valuable lesson from sports, Sports really has a way of putting you in your place. But I learned from sports that you can't do everything. Like even if you want to do something, sometimes you don't have what it takes to do it, and you have to admit it to yourself. So sports was a really good, I'm glad I did all that. I'm glad I wrestled for 4 years. Even though I was terrible, I was really terrible. Yeah, but I tried so hard. I worked so hard. I tried so hard. In all sports, I just tried so hard, and I couldn't believe that I wasn't as good as everybody else, but I wasn't. I was just a terrible athlete. And so that was a lesson for me. But I could play music really good. I had this, I could just touch shit and play it and make music. So I had that ability. So I learned, sports taught me that you can't do everything. And maybe if I would have been really good in sports, my whole life would have been different because I wouldn't have, learned that lesson that you can't do everything. Because sometimes people that are really sports heroes in high school, their life in the future doesn't sometimes work out, Well, maybe everybody's life doesn't work out. Who knows? Anyway, sports was a great lesson. I was the worst wrestler that ever lived. Yeah. I was just not strong. I was just not athletic, man. I don't know. And I was a joke when I ran. So, and it's hard to admit that because I wanted so bad to be good. Man, I wanted to be good so bad, and I was just not good. So, anyway. What am I? Oh. Some guy said, I don't know what your name is, but you were talking about you broke the world's land speed record on a motorcycle at the Bonneville Salt Flats. That's some crazy shit. I always wanted to do that, but I felt it was so dangerous, Anyway, my hat's off to you, man. Whoever you are, wherever you are, that is fucking amazing, man. That's amazing. Anybody that can do that is amazing. Yeah, that takes some real cojones, man. And you did it on a motorcycle. Even the cars, I knew people that took cars there and did that, and that was crazy shit. But on the motorcycle, that was psychotic. I mean, that was fucking lunatic death wish time. I'm really impressed by you, whoever you are, wherever you are out there, man. I'm impressed. You broke world land speed records on a motorcycle. Thank God, you're the dude, man. That's crazy. Anyway, I'm really impressed by that. Let me tell you. Yeah, you were the real shit. You were the real shit. Oh, some people said I should talk about current events. Not all current events are politics. It's weird, yeah, they aren't all politics, but some, anyway, that's a good idea, if I could find stuff to talk about that's happening. But like talking about the Kennedy files being released, that's not political, and about the Oswald check, and that's cool. But I have to be careful because I own a restaurant. And the trouble when you own a restaurant, you're in the hospitality business, and you don't really want to. You don't want to offend anybody, and you want everybody to feel welcome. So you don't want to get on some soapbox and start talking about how you feel about politics, because you're going to offend somebody and you're going to bring a lot of hate. And I'm not into hate at all. And yeah, it's just not something you do when you're in the restaurant business. You don't go out and be all political, because you're going to offend half your customers, because half people think one way and half people think the other way. And some people, when they don't agree with you, it really upsets them, you know what I mean? And so, and I don't have that strong of opinions anyway, so it's better that I don't chime in on that kind of stuff, because I'm in the hospitality business, and we're hospitable, and we like everybody, and we really do, man. We like everybody. And I know everybody eats at our restaurant. We have the weirdest restaurant. Like most restaurants, you have one kind of customer, like your cool hip restaurant. You have those cool hip people are all there. You know how when you go to a restaurant and you feel like you're not welcome there, We're not like that, man. We have every kind of person on the planet eats at our restaurant. Every kind of person you can imagine. Rich people, poor people, blue collar, white collar, yuppie people, everybody comes there and eats, and it's a real neutral territory. So we like to keep it that way. And so for that reason, I'm not going to talk politics. Plus, I'm not really super political. So that would be kind of, what is the word for it? Bullshit. It would be bullshit. It'd be like me wrestling. I wouldn't be good at it anyway. Oh, somebody asked me what keyboard players I liked. There was a guy named Jimmy McGriff. He was kind of a jazz kind of keyboard player. Anyway, I liked the way he played, and he wasn't the most popular keyboard player, but I liked Jimmy McGriff, and I liked Booker T. They said, "Did you like Booker T?" I liked Booker T a lot, Most of the organ players in the rock bands of that era, I wasn't a huge fan of theirs. It wasn't that I didn't like their music, but I was into R&B. So if somebody was an R&B type player, I liked their playing. And if they weren't, I sort of got guys that were holding chords all the time. And anyway, that's cool. But that wasn't what I liked. So yeah, I like Booker T. I met him a couple of times. He was really a nice guy. He was nice, yeah. An actual, genuinely nice human being. Now, somebody told me there was a jazz organ player named Jimmy Smith, and he had a club or something. I never met him, but I heard really bad things about him. I heard he really had an attitude. He was sort of had an attitude. That's what I heard. And he was sort of arrogant, and he would put people down when he didn't think they played right. Anyway, but I like Jimmy McGriff. TV shows. I was never much of a TV guy. I really never sat around watching TV. I get too bored, I get too jumpy. Like, I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld when that was on all those years. I never saw that, His first comedy special, he filmed at my theater in San Pedro. I owned the Werner Grand Theater in San Pedro, this great Art Deco theater. And we had a lot of stuff filmed there. Madonna, those pictures of Madonna in the bathroom smoking a cigarette when she was first starting out. Those were all filmed in my theater. Anyway, it was cool. But I wasn't a TV guy. Oh, somebody asked me if I knew Dr. Hook. I really never knew those guys, but the Dr. Hook had a girlfriend, and my wife Mary knew her, so she came over to the house a few times. They hung out, but I wasn't hanging out with them. They were, they were girls that were hanging out. But I never really knew that band, even though I guess they were okay guys, but I didn't know them. Somebody asked me what happened to Weed Wednesday. Well, Weed Wednesday, when Dylan and I were doing Weed Wednesday, it sounded like a really great concept, but what happened was one week we did it, and we did one of the first times we did it, we got so high, man, and we did such a terrible podcast that we didn't even publish it. we didn't put it on the air. You know, it was just the worst. We were just like, you know, we were so high. And so Weed Wednesday was a good concept, but in reality, it didn't translate into a good show. You know what I mean? It was like we were too high. So that show, we didn't do that. And then another time we tried to do Weed Wednesday, but we forgot to press record. And that was what happened. Oh, my screen's blinking on and off. This is terrible. Okay. Weed Wednesday. That's what happened to Weed Wednesday. I have no Cincinnati connections. Sorry, everybody. I never really had any Cincinnati connections. I'm a California guy. When did I live in Hawaii? Well, Hawaii, I have a long history in Hawaii. I have pictures of me as a little kid like 4 years old, on the beach in Waikiki, and there's only one hotel, that famous old pink hotel, and nothing else, just a blank beach. That before they did any of the development there. So my parents were in the military, and we were in Hawaii for a while. We were in the Philippines for a while. And anyway, I have pictures of me in Hawaii as a little kid. So I always felt this connection to Hawaii. And then I went back, and then I lived there after Mill Valley. I lived in Hawaii for a while, a few years. My son Mika was born in Hawaii, so I have one of my sons was born there. Yeah, I always felt this connection to Hawaii. But if you grew up in California, there's like a triangle, you know, L.A., San Francisco, Hawaii. It's like this triangle, you know. At least it was in my life. And I know a lot of other people did the same thing because, well, you know, San Francisco, I grew up really close to there. We could drive there in an hour and 15 minutes from where our little farm town. So we used to go over there, you know. We used to go to Santa Cruz. And I always, once again, I would always go over there and go, fuck, why can't I live at the beach? Anyway, I wound up living at the beach. So, yeah, that's my story of Hawaii. Jesse Colin Young. Yeah, I was sad to hear he died. I really didn't know him, but he always seemed like, once again, he seemed like a nice enough guy. Yeah. I liked their band. They were a cool band. I liked them. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't get sick on the Doris helicopter. It's really funny. I don't get motion sick in airplanes, but I get motion sick on boats, man. I can stand on the dock and I can get sick, you know. But I never got sick on the Doris helicopter. Somebody asked me that. Tony Tubbs did not. When Lionel fought Tony Tubbs, there was no elbow involved. That was a left hook. Tubbs threw a punch. Lionel ducked down. He coming over. He turned the hook. Like Joe Goosen worked with. I watched Joe Goosen work with Lionel for months, showing him how to turn that hook, turn that left hook, bring that left hook, duck, and turn the hook. Boom. And Lionel threw the perfect left hook that he'd been training for months to. That hook. Joe Goosen showed him how to do that. And he came up and knocked Tony Tubbs out, knocked him out cold, man. The dude was laying on his back, and there was no elbow involved in that at all. And the whole time I represented Lionel, when I got him, it was 6-10, so I don't know about those 16 fights he had before me, too much about them. I know he told me a little bit about them, but I really didn't know that much about them. And so I don't know if he got disqualified for low blows. Doesn't seem like him, but maybe he did. But anyway, when I represented Lionel, we didn't ever lose a fight until the Tony Tubbs fight. So we went all the way up into the top 10 to number 3 in the world, and we never lost a fight, and until we fought Lennox Lewis. So anyway, I don't know about Lionel getting disqualified for low blows. And Tony Tubbs definitely didn't take an elbow in that fight. Didn't take an elbow in the fight. Somebody asked me how long I raced karts. Man, I really love karts. And I raced them for a few years. And it was really a lot of fun, man. It was really a lot of fun. It was psycho, man. It's psycho. We were racing, road racing at big racetracks where the big cars race, you know, like full-blown Ontario Motor Speedway, Laguna Seca, Sears Point, which later became Sonoma Raceway, all the famous racetracks, you know. And carts for fun, man. They were psycho. I had twin-engine, alcohol-burning carts. They would go like 140 miles per hour. Anyway, it was fun, man. It was fun. It was psycho, though. I'm lucky I didn't get hurt. Here's the story. This is the last story today. Somebody asked me how Frosty quit and all the stuff leading up to that. So I'm going to tell you the whole story, and because somebody thought it had nothing to do with LSD, by the way. Somebody asked me that. I had a manager named Peter Rackman, and he managed me. He managed Gary Puckett in the Union Gap. Remember Gary Puckett? He sang those funny romantic songs. Anyway, he managed Gary Puckett. He managed me, and he managed an actress named Karen Black. And Karen Black was his girlfriend. I have Karen Black stories. She was psycho, man. She was psycho. Anyway, yeah. And so Peter, he decided to merge his company with this guy named Leonard Stogel. And Leonard Stogel was this horrible person, but he was a guy that had been involved in the music business. In fact, he had managed Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. How's that for a name from the past? Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. Leonard Stogel was his manager. So he was trying to make his mark in that era, and so he was a really ruthless kind of guy, smart guy, but ruthless. So anyway, Peter merged his company with Leonard Stogel's company. So then we were there, you know. But after a while, I don't know how long we were there, not that long. Peter wasn't happy working with Leonard Stogel because he was a scoundrel and not a good guy. And so Peter decided to leave Leonard Stogel. So I went with Peter because I came there with Peter. He was my manager. I left with Peter. And so I didn't realize this was Leonard Stogel. After we left, he befriended Frosty, and he'd take Frosty up to his house and kind of wine and dine him and tell him he was going to make him famous. And he gave Frosty a whole bill of goods and tell him he should quit and everything. And so he orchestrated Frosty quitting. He told him, you can make a band. I'm going to make you famous. And he was trying to get back at us for leaving him. And now you got to understand, I was a single artist, so I felt like Frosty was a sideman. That's a term, musician term, you know, for the union term. Anyway, so I felt like Frosty was just another drummer. I had drummers before Frosty, and he was another drummer I had, and I had him for 2 albums. But he was the most popular drummer with the public that I ever had. He wasn't my most favorite drummer to play with. There was a couple of drummers that I enjoyed playing with more than Frosty. But he was a good drummer and solid, you know. And so this guy, Leonard Stogel, he really did us wrong. It was one thing for him to represent Frosty and help Frosty start a band. I understand that because Frosty was a sideman. He was just a drummer. And I had a lot of drummers in my band, like Keith Knudsen played in my band. He went on to be in the Doobie Brothers. So I accepted that as a single artist. I accepted that the drummers were going to leave. You know, they would play with me for a while, then they would move on and have a career doing whatever they do. And that comes with being a single artist. You know, I wasn't a group. I was a single artist. So I understood that. But what Leonard Stogel did, which was really, really horrible, was Frosty and I were supposed to play the Forum on a Friday night. And it was the first time I played the Forum, and this is the biggest gig of my life. And I was thinking, this is a really important gig. Well, on the Monday before the gig, they contacted us and told us Frosty's not going to be at the Forum this Friday. So I got like 4 days, you know, to find a drummer and play the Forum. And everybody's coming there expecting me to do my thing. And man, I'm just crushed, you know, like, what do you mean he's not going to play the Forum? You know, this is crazy, you know? And so I tried to reach Frosty, and I couldn't reach him. He was, you know, I couldn't reach him. So this guy, Leonard Stogel, orchestrated that to get back at us. That was his way of getting back at us. He would try to ruin our most important gig. And for the most part, he ruined it, yeah. And hello. Hey, everybody, here's Big Kitty. I'll continue the story, but Big Kitty's here. Don't go step on my shit, man. Don't cancel me out, big boy. Yeah. So Leonard Stogel did that, and that was such a chicken shit move, you know. And Frosty, I was sort of disappointed that Frosty did that because I thought, you know, I didn't mind him quitting my band, but I thought under those circumstances where he just gave me no notice at all, right before the gig at the Forum, that was not nice, you know. That was really bad. And Leonard Stogel orchestrated that. He did that, Len. He put that whole thing together. That was his way of getting back at us for leaving him. So that was really an underhanded, dirty, dirty thing to do. Now, yeah, that's all I can say about that. Yeah, to this day, I didn't like that. And now Frosty and I patched things up. We were just, you know, we were friends later. We even played again later together on one album, you know. So, but it was never quite the same, you know. Yeah, but that was sure shocking, man. He called me I got notified on Monday that Frosty wasn't going to be there Friday when we played the Forum. What am I supposed to do? Find a drummer? But luckily Joel Larson came and did the gig with me, man. I was so lucky Joel was in town and not playing somewhere, and he came and played with me. And then right after that we recorded the 5th album, which was my biggest album, and I had the hit Do You Know What I Mean? And Joel played on Do You Know What I Mean? But everybody thought Frosty played on it because, you know, it was right there. So Joel played with me for 3 or 4 months and he really helped me out of a jam and helped me record that album, and it was a big hit album. And Joel's my friend to this day, you know. He's my good friend to this day, you know, and I love Joel. Yeah, but back to Leonard Stogel. This is a good story. Talk about karma, man. Here's karma. So Leonard Stogel was in Chicago doing some business, and he was flying back in a jetliner, and the jetliner crashed, and he died. And I thought, okay, that's your karma, man, your karma. And then I started thinking about jetliners and stuff, and I thought, what if there's such a thing as a karmic load, you know? And this shows you how crazy I was back then. I was thinking it was the karmic load. Like, you could have the perfect airplane, perfectly fine, but if you had too many assholes on the airplane, the karmic load was too heavy, the plane would just fall out of the sky and crash. So that was my version of what happened. Now, that's not very nice because a lot of people died in that plane crash, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with the karmic load. But in my frame of mind at the time, I thought it was total karma that plane crashed, and I thought, well, there must have been so many assholes on that plane that the karmic load was so heavy that it crashed. But we all know that's a bullshit concept, but that shows you where my mind was at that point, you know. So anyway, that was really disappointing that Frosty did that. And the reason it was so disappointing was because when I hired Frosty, nobody wanted me to hire Frosty. I hired Frosty to play drums with me, and my roadies quit. They were so pissed off at me, and they thought I was making such a big mistake that my roadies quit. Jerry Moss, who owned A&M Records, he took me in his office and said, "Lee, you're just about breaking through. You're making a big mistake. You can't hire this guy, you know." And so everybody was telling me I couldn't hire Frosty. And I said, no, I'm going to hire him, you know. I'm going to hire him. And he's the drummer. He's the right drummer. But he showed up. I've told this story before. He showed up for the audition to play with me. Somebody told me they knew this drummer, and he just got out of a mental care facility, and he was having some kind of nervous breakdown or something. And he was a guy that was playing in show bands, and so he shows up in a white shirt and cufflinks, and his hair was all slicked back like a bowling ball. He was so far from being a hippie that it was shocking. He was like just a little show band dude, a little fat show band dude. And so I talked to him and said, "Hey, can you wash that shit out of your hair? Do you mind dressing different? Can you get with the program here?" And he goes, "Sure." He had no problem with it. So he was ready to do it. And so he did it, and he washed the shit out of his hair, and his hair was all curly and wild, and he was perfect. He was a perfect drummer, you know. And I remember I went and watched Cream play, and was it Cream? Yeah, I think so. And Ginger Baker, and I watched him play, and I watched how he did his drum solo and worked the audience all up. So I went back and I told Frosty about Ginger Baker's solo and what he did that got the audience going. So Frosty started doing that where you go boom with the kick drum, boom, 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 and he got crazy. And he hit. And so Frosty took another thing. When he got to the boom, 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 boom part, he started threw his sticks and started playing with his hands, and it's just fucking great, you know. But that's why it was so disappointing in the forum, because I really stuck up for Frosty when I hired him. When everybody, even Jerry Moss, who was the head of A&M Records, was telling me I couldn't hire this guy. I was really making a big mistake, and you'd work so hard and you're almost breaking on through. You can't do this, you know. And I says, no, this is the right drummer. This is the right drummer. So my roadies quit. I mean, it was a fucking major thing hiring Frosty. Nobody wanted me to hire him. Nobody. But I knew he was the guy I knew he was good. He was good. Yeah, and it felt right. It felt right, and so I did it, you know. And everybody told me I was making a mistake, and so I really stuck up for Frosty. So for him to leave me, you know, on no notice, I thought, wow, I really stuck up for this guy, and he does that to me. So that was sort of weird. But I realized at the time that it was Leonard Stogel, this manager guy. He was an evil fuck, man. Anyway, he died in that plane crash, and I was really glad he died. And to this day, I'm glad he died. You know, he was not a good guy. And Frosty had a band. They started a band. They called it Sweat Hog. And, you know, he stood with a bunch of his old friends from San Jose. And it was an all right band, but it didn't have the magic, you know, so they didn't do anything. But they were, you know, they were a solid band, but they weren't, you know, music is funny, you know, sometimes stuff just clicks, you know. Some people have the shit, you know, and their band didn't have the shit, you know, and maybe if that guy Leonard Stogel had lived, they would have done a little better than they did. But he didn't live, and they didn't live either. So that band was short-lived. But that's how it is. But yeah, but Frosty had every right to quit because he was a sideman. I just didn't like the way he quit. You know what I mean? I didn't like the way he quit. Yeah. To this day, that kind of bugs me. But, you know, I forgave him, and we went on to play again later. We made an album, and when I was playing guitar, terrible album. Anyway, that's the story of Frosty and how Frosty quit. And Joe Larson came in and played one of the most famous drum licks ever, man. That little drum lick on the break of Do You Know What I Mean was so good and so perfect. I remember Jim Keltner told me he really liked that lick, and I was really a big fan of Keltner's because he was such a great player. But anyway, that's the story of Frosty quitting. It had nothing to do with LSD. Yeah, so they're releasing the Kennedy files. And the Epstein files, that should be interesting too. This is an interesting time, you know. I don't know if you guys know what swatting is. Swatting is where people call up and tell the cops you got hostages or somebody's dead in your house or something, and the cops all show up. The SWAT team all shows up because they think there's some thing going on. And so that's something that the people on the left do to people they don't like. They SWAT them, and then they send the SWAT team there. Like some of these guys have been swatted like 15 times, you know, and yeah, they call up and say the most heinous shit that's happening at your house, and then the cops show up, and that's what swatting is. So I don't want to talk politics. I don't want to get swatted, you know what I mean? Plus, I'm not good at politics. I'm not good at that shit. Anyway, that's my story. Any more questions, everybody? Yeah, that was my story. I guess that's all I have today. Lee Harvey Oswald's payroll check. Jack Kirby signed it. Is that crazy? Is that the fucking most crazy thing you ever heard? Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the stories. I sort of rushed through everything today. I don't know why I was in such a hyper mood, rushing or what, or I was rushing. Yeah, some days I rush. Most days I rush. I'm a rush guy. I rush around. I don't know what it is, man. I'm so energized. You know, I've said this before, but I've never tasted coffee and I've never tasted a cigarette. I've done a lot of other stuff, I must admit, but those are two things I never did. And the reason was it reminded me of my mother's breath, you know. Every morning I woke up and I heard, I smelled coffee and cigarettes and heard country music. There you go. So my whole life I didn't want to listen to country music, drink coffee, or smoke cigarettes. It's funny how your upbringing imprints you so heavily, you know. If I drank coffee, I would probably explode. You know, I wake up every day like somebody flipped a switch and I'm like wide awake. You know, I don't like sort of wake up and get the day going. None of that, man. I leap out of bed. I wake up, bing, and I leap out of bed, and that's who I am. So I don't think coffee would be good for me. I think I would just explode or something, you know. Anyway, I, me, my. Yeah. Anyway, I still have that one story that I'm sort of hesitant to tell. It's a true story. I don't know if I should tell it or not. I'm not going to tell it today, and actually I've been talking too long, but maybe I'll tell it. God, I don't know. Something about telling all your shit is kind of weird, but I guess that's what I do on my podcast. I tell all of my shit. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'm starting to repeat myself. I've run out of little questions and answers. Dude, man, the Bonneville salt flats? Fuck! On a motorcycle? That is some psycho stuff. I've seen videos of motorcycles going down the Bonneville salt, and they start shaking, man. They get out of control because they're going so fast. I think, wow, dude, did you ever have that happen to you when you were riding where it started shaking? You know, I've seen some videos that are just psychotic, and I always thought the guys that rode the motorcycles were the most psycho people. And you rode the motorcycles, dude. You're my hero. You're out there, man. That's some crazy shit. Anyway, it's so nice to hear your stories. I can't tell everybody's story, but that story got to me because I've raced and done stuff, and always been a fan of racing and boxing. I like that a lot. Yeah. So maybe I'll find some current events to talk about. I don't know. Yeah. I like that they're releasing the Kennedy stuff after all these years, but I don't know if we'll get any answers. All these people, yeah, we know it was a conspiracy of some sort. I guess that's enough. This assassination shit is so weird. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird stuff. Anyway, okay, I'm out of here. I'm starting to babble. So goodbye, everybody. I hope you all had a good time today. My screen is blinking on and off. I'm just thinking to myself, oh, fuck, the screen's blinking on and off. I don't know if the podcast blinked on and off. I have a feeling it didn't. I think it was just a screen blinking on and off. But it scares me when that happens. So 3, 2, 1, poof.